The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick has been listening in, and she joins us now. So Megan, this is really something that a lot of parents in Ontario, well, a lot of parents in every province have been waiting for, are going to have to sift through. There are lots of different elements to this.
Yeah, so let's start with the general plan. As you mentioned, for elementary schools, all of them will be open in Ontario come September, Andrew, 5 days a week, with kids going back to class as normal. The class sizes also will not be capped. They will be cohorted, they're saying, meaning the kids will be with the same kids all day and the same teacher, ideally. They will allow for the French teachers to come in, for example, and that kind of thing. But by and large, elementary school will look the same. There will be physical changes in the school, but going to school 5 days a week. Now for high school, this is where it's different. High school will depend on where you live in the province. So there will be what they're calling designated school boards that will start with a hybrid model of learning. So students will be in class some days, at home other days learning. It might be every other day, or the school board can determine how it'll happen, Andrew, but the idea is that they're in class 50% of the time, home 50% of the time. When they are home, they are expected to be doing online learning. They will be getting lesson plans, and ideally the teacher who's physically in the classroom will be doing synchronous learning online so the person at home can learn at the same time. The designated school boards, where this hybrid model will be adopted, are the ones in Ontario's biggest cities. There are 24 of them. I'll just name a couple of them. They are in places like Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, Waterloo, Niagara, Windsor, Halton, Durham, York region, and those mostly cover the public boards and the Catholic boards as well. Now, parents have a choice. If they are not comfortable sending their children to school in the fall, Andrew, they can opt out. They can keep their children home, and school boards are expected to provide online learning for those students. Those are the basics. Now, a few other things people might be wondering about in terms of, again, how are they keeping the school environment safe? Well, they talked about having hand sanitizer throughout the schools. They talked about having physical distance in the classrooms, redesigning the classrooms, removing furniture if possible, just creating more physical space. They might have directional arrows in the hallways, Andrew. All of these sort of ideas have been put in guidance documents for the school boards. In terms of protocols, they did their talk, I think, about testing in high schools for COVID-19. They are talking about hiring nurses to have in the schools. They are talking about self-screening every day. That's the expectation of students and staff doing COVID-19 self-screening. If anyone ends up testing positive, they will not be allowed to return to the school until they are cleared by public health officials. Just lastly, parents might too be wondering, will after-school activities be running, extracurriculars? The guidance documents say yes, clubs and sports teams can operate if physical distancing is possible and if the equipment and space can be cleaned between use. And just lastly too, how to get kids to school, Andrew? Yes, buses will be running, buses will be operating, but again, there's a whole list of protocols for them as well, including the drivers wearing masks and eye protection, as well as assigned seating for the children on the bus.
Yeah, I want to get to the cost in a second, but you know, and I think you mentioned, or I mentioned, that masks would be required.
Oh, that's right. I should go through that. Yes.
That grade 4 to 12, but and optional for younger. But also, I want to, you know, because some of our colleagues have been mentioning, and other people have been mentioning that. You know, they're a little bit nervous about the idea, even though younger kids, it seems as though they don't get COVID or spread it as much, they seem a little nervous about these full classroom sizes, even though it's optional.
Optional to send the kids to class, or the masks?
Yeah, sorry.
Both are really.
Optional to send the kids to class, the younger kids to class. Even though it's a cohort, it's still, they're not reducing the class size as they are in high schools for many of the big cities.
Yeah, and so class sizes will be what they would have been anyway, is what the ministry is, what the minister is saying. So, you know, again, depending on the registration at your school and what grade your kid is in, there might only be 18 kids in that class, or there might be 26. I think he did mention for grades 1 to 3, there is a cap on class size of 20 students per class. I did want to mention too, because it might be important for parents, that childcare centers within schools will be opening at full capacity as of September 1st. So in addition, that's a big thing for parents, obviously, too, for kids who aren't in school yet, but they rely on those childcare centers for their younger kids as well. But yes, how big the classes will end up being might depend on how many parents opt out of sending their kids to class. And the reason they're cohorting, though, the high school students at 15, ideally, is that it's sort of in theory, like that's what they're asking the school boards to do, Andrew, is if as much as possible keep the kids in groups of 15. It sounded like there might be a little bit of flexibility there, because it depends on what courses the high school students are taking, right? Like in the older grades, they're taking more electives, they're taking different courses, so it might be hard to keep the same kids together all day, depending on what classes they're taking, but they are looking at different models. He was saying it's called a quadmester, where they sort of it's intense learning of one course in the morning, another course in the afternoon, to try to keep the kids together as much as possible. But they were saying there's more evidence that COVID-19 spreads among older people more easily, and so that's the reason for cohorting in high school and not the younger grades.
This is complicated stuff.
Very complicated for the school boards to try and figure out how to manage this.
Yeah, Megan, thank you. I wanted to get the cost, but we'll do that
$309 million. I'll just put it out there.
Okay, thank you.